Hello and welcome to Basics of WordPress. My name is Brian DeConick and I will be leading your training session today. So anytime we do workshops via YouTube Live, sometimes it's interesting. Usually it works really well, but I do want to say a few things up front. There's a little bit of a delay between when I say words and when it gets broadcast to you. And then obviously there's a little bit of a delay between when you let us know that there's an issue and I can do something about it. So if you have a question, if there's an issue, something like that, and I'm just still talking away, I promise I'm not ignoring you. I just don't know about it yet. So with that in mind, there is a link to a Q&A document in the description just below this video. So if you haven't already, go ahead and click on that link to open up that document. And I see a few people have already said hello. If you'd like to say hello, and if you could just let me know that you're hearing this and seeing this okay, so I know there aren't any major issues. And I'll just sort of wait for a moment and make sure everything's going all right. Okay, so it looks like audio and video are okay. So I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to Basics of WordPress. Again, my name is Brian DeConick, and I am a web designer and developer with the Office of Information Technology's Design and Web Services team. Basically, that means I build websites for the university. If you have a favorite website on campus, I'll go ahead and take credit for that right now. If you have a least favorite website, I promise that was somebody else who built it. I will be talking to you today about WordPress, which is one of the most popular tools for managing websites at NC State. Generally for this class, people come in with a lot of different experience levels. So in the Q&A document, if you'd like to just say briefly how much do you use WordPress, what you use it for, if you've used it for a long time, or if this is your first time, something like that. This is open to everybody. We're not expecting you to know anything specific. It's just something for me to gauge who am I talking to and what do you already know. So since this is a basics of WordPress class, we do cover all the basics. And the first basic that I want to cover is all your resources for help if you don't learn everything you need to learn from me right now. The number one resource for all things WordPress is the WordPress Codex, which is linked to in the slides. And if you didn't see already on the title slide, there was a URL for the slides here, so you can follow these links. I'll also be sharing things out in an email to all of you after the workshop is over. So the WordPress Codex is the central documentation for all things WordPress, everything from how do I create a new page to how do I do some advanced coding for developers. In addition to that, WordPress is used very widely, and so a Google search that's sort of well worded to describe your problem will probably bring you to somebody else who has had a similar problem, if not at the WordPress Codex. So there's a lot of information out there. Our office also provides video tutorials at wordpress.ncsu.edu/support/video tutorials. I should mention these videos are not created by us. They are purchased from a vendor. So they're not exactly what you'll see if you're dealing with a campus WordPress instance, but it's close enough that you should be able to get some help. The NC State Help Desk provides some basic WordPress help, and anything they can't answer, they will escalate to our team. So anytime you have an issue with your campus website, if you're using WordPress on campus, you can email help@ncsu.edu. And then our team has in-person office hours every Friday from 9 a.m. to noon in the Avent Ferry building, Avent Ferry Technology Center, room 106. It's a windowless room in the basement. It's all glitz and glamour in IT. So if you have a question about your campus website or even a non-campus website, Anything that's not hosted by us, obviously, there's a limit to the kind of support we can give you, but we can always answer questions and offer advice. So anytime you want to talk about WordPress, you have a question, please feel free to stop by any Friday, 9 until noon. Unless it's a holiday or we're closed for snow or something like that. Normal limitations apply. For information about campus web hosting and how that connects to WordPress, we do have a service called getontheweb.ncsu.edu. And that's a website that will sort of walk you through what your options are. And then if you leave here a WordPress enthusiast and you want more, you just can't get enough WordPress, there are events called WordCamps, which are sort of informal WordPress conferences or workshop weekends, where you can learn about different topics related to WordPress, everything from beginner to advanced. There's one hosted at NC State's campus down on Centennial campus every year, usually in the springtime, called WordCamp Raleigh. More information about that is at 2019.raleigh.wordcamp.org. There's not a lot of information online yet, but if you're interested, just keep looking at that website periodically, and more information will be shared soon. Looking at the comments, Kim here asks, will this be based on WordPress as it is now or on Gutenberg? So that's a great question, and I'm planning on talking a little bit about Gutenberg, but mainly focusing on WordPress as it is now. So if people don't know what Gutenberg is, you'll find out in a little bit, but the short version is that in the next version of WordPress that will be released, there will be a big change to the content editor. That next version, there's some issues with that big change that our office is communicating out to other developers on campus, sort of the right way to upgrade and hopefully not throw those big changes at all of our users right away. If you have more questions about that, that's definitely something to talk to us at office hours, or to email me directly, or email the help desk, and eventually it'll filter to us. So with all that said, again, feel free to jump in with questions. I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A document, but if I miss something, just bear with me, and maybe, I don't know what the Q&A document equivalent of waving your hand around is, but just lots of exclamation points maybe, or something like that. And I promise I'll see it eventually. So with all that, let's get going. So in this workshop, we're going to cover the basics of WordPress. We're going to start with what is WordPress and why do we use it? We'll also talk about the difference between managed environments and self-hosted WordPress. Those are sort of the two ways you might see WordPress out in the world. We'll talk about your options at NC State and compare some of those to what it looks like out off campus, your outside hosting options. We'll go through some vocabulary, all the words of WordPress, and then everybody will leave this workshop today having built your very own WordPress website. So let's get to it. Why do we love WordPress? So the answer is lots and lots and lots and lots of reasons. First of all, it is an open source product, which means the university does not have to pay for it. It means that anybody can use it. All the code is available online, which lets people spot bugs, lets people spot security issues, and fix those bugs and fix those security issues. It has a very large user community that does a pretty good job of keeping track of how everything works and documenting that for everybody else. And to give you a sense of that scope of the large user community, this says here used on 27% of all websites. This is an out-of-date slide. It is actually used on closer to 31 or 32% of all websites. It is the most popular content management system worldwide. So that 32%, the next highest market share is probably something like 8%, and from there it's smaller and smaller. So WordPress is very well known. It's very widely used, and maybe the best thing for us is that it's easy to get into and easy to get out of, meaning that it's relatively easy to use, learn how to use, dive in and get all of your content migrated into if you're using something else prior to WordPress. And then it's easy to get out of, meaning uh, the way data is stored in WordPress is very standardized, and it has tools built in so that if someday the next big thing comes along, it will be relatively easy for us to get content out of WordPress and into whatever that next big thing is, and you won't have to start over from scratch. So that's a nice thing that hopefully does not happen for a little while, because we've put a lot of effort into the WordPress services at NC State, but it's always something we're thinking about is what will the next big thing be. WordPress is also great for us because it is incredibly flexible. So we have customizable themes, and we'll talk about what a theme is in a little bit, that give us the option of making our websites look and act like whatever we want them to look and act like. So we're not really limited by anything except our own technical ability as developers or our own imagination as content creators building in WordPress. Um, there are lots of deployment options and editing options. Um, and that's particularly useful at NC State because it means that we can have the same application running a tiny little website that only has one page, or a massive website that has 1,000 pages that documents all IT services on campus or something like that. It's very flexible and extendable using plugins, and we'll talk about what that means. But basically, it means we can add new features to WordPress whenever we need to. And it's very well maintained by the broader WordPress community. So if there are updates or security fixes, something like that, those get pushed out quickly, and it's very easy to install those and keep everything safe and secure. So when we talk about WordPress, we can sort of be talking about two types, quote unquote, types of WordPress, uh, which are managed environments and self-hosted environments. So you might be familiar with WordPress.com, especially if you've used it outside of the university. WordPress.com is like a lot of other companies like Wix or Squarespace, or I'm blanking on others, but there are 1,000 of them out there, where you can just go and for free sign up for an account and start building a website. And if you want to pay an extra $20 or $50 or something like that, you get extra features, you get your own domain name, things like that. Um, so WordPress.com is an instance of a managed WordPress environment. WordPress.org is the website that talks about the WordPress project. That's where all the source code is located, and that's where you can download the WordPress application to run it on a web server. And so a self-hosted WordPress website is a website where you have downloaded the application, installed it on a web server, and you are running WordPress on your web server without ever talking to any centralized anything, without WordPress.com, without paying that $20 a month or whatever for your special features, anything like that. So that's sort of what it looks like out in the world. At NC State, here's what that looks like. We have OIT provides two managed environments for campus, WordPress.ncsu.edu, which is very similar to WordPress.com, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Anyone can sign up and create a website. And then we also have what's called hosted WordPress, which is a premium service for sort of the equivalent of paying that $20 a month to WordPress.com to upgrade your website and get all the special features. Sort of a similar sense for the premium service. And we'll talk about that, I think, on the next slide. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So managed environments there means somebody else is taking care of it, is responsible for the website. You're just sort of using one website within this bigger platform. At NC State, we also have the option of self-hosting WordPress websites in OIT's cPanel web hosting or in other web hosting services on campus. If you're in the College of Engineering, for example, the College of Engineering maintains its own web servers. So cPanel web hosting, you're given a web hosting account and you can install whatever application you want to within the terms of service for the web hosting agreement. And WordPress is one of those applications that you can install. You might wonder, what's better? What do I want? And that really depends on what you're trying to do. So, for instance, in a managed environment, somebody else has taken care of the server configuration, of setting up the application. You're just going to the website, signing up, creating your account, and creating your website. Um, that means that you are part of a community. So community in this sense means you can't just install any plugin you want. Somebody is curating that collection of themes and plugins that are available to you because the same plug, like I guess you can think of it as you don't want to wreck your house accidentally because that will impact your neighbor's house. You're all together in a neighborhood or you're all in a network together, and the choices that you make in your site, if they're really catastrophic, could potentially impact the others. And so with that in mind, when you're in a managed environment, somebody is sort of controlling what's available, maybe limiting some of your options, but making sure that the options that you have are of a higher quality. And so again, an example of that is the wordpress.ncsu.edu service or the wordpress.com service off campus. Um, it also limits you. You can't edit the source code directly, uh, except sometimes, and there are some special situations with that. Um, and you have somebody who's responsible for the environment who is providing support for you. If you are self-hosted, that means you're in charge. You've got to set it up in the web space. You've got to configure your web server. You've got to install WordPress, and you're responsible for maintaining it. But that means you also get lots of other features available. So, for instance, total control over what your domain name is, without having to request something special or without just getting what's what's immediately available. Um, you can choose to install any plugin or theme that you want, but there are risks to that. So you can do anything you want, good or bad. And the big thing is you're sort of on your own. Nobody is going to fix it for you unless you have an agreement with somebody who will provide that support for you. For instance, you can work with OIT to provide that support, or you can hire your own developer or something like that. So that's all very hand wavy. Um, hopefully it all sort of makes sense. If it doesn't, I think everything will start to sort of come into focus as we start to actually see the application. And if you do have any questions beyond what I've just said, please feel free to ask now or later on via email or swing by office hours. The main focus of this workshop will be on actually using WordPress. And before we start doing a live demo and before you start working with WordPress yourself for today, we're going to start with a little vocabulary lesson. And the reason we do the vocab lesson is because everybody has sort of their own words that they use to describe everything. In particular, words like post or page, things like that are sort of ambiguous. A web page for one person is a whole website for another person, and neither of those precisely means what they mean in the WordPress application. So I'm going to go through some words that are WordPress words that maybe have other meanings, but this is what we mean when we're going to talk about them today. So the first word is post, and post can be used in two different ways. Um, the first way is as a noun, and a post is an entry that displays in reverse chronological order on the home page by default. So this is a blog post. You're probably familiar with blogs. You've probably read news articles on a website, on a newspaper website or something like that. Those are things um, that are ultimately posts in the WordPress world. They're distinct from pages, which we'll talk about in a moment, because posts are associated with some single point in time. So if you open up today's newspaper and read all of the articles from today's newspaper, those are today's posts. They were all posted today. But if you open up the newspaper tomorrow, it'll be a separate set of posts. The other way we might use post in WordPress world is as a verb, and that is to add content to your website. So you might post a post. Um, Sometimes the way they get used interchangeably like that can lead to some confusion. I'll try to be pretty explicit about what I mean during this presentation today. So the next content type, nope, this is a different order than I remembered it. Okay, so this is a lesson for everybody. Always review your slides before you start talking. So the next vocabulary word is still related to the post content type, and that's called a category. So categories are a taxonomy. It's a class of a class or group of things possessing some quality or qualities in common. So all posts that you post on your WordPress website belong to at least one category by default. Oftentimes that category might be uncategorized, or it might be a generic category like NC State. And then you have the option of changing that category to be something else more relevant to the content of your post. Categories can be hierarchical, meaning you can have a category and a subcategory and a sub-subcategory and so on. And that hierarchical relationship tells you something about those categories. So for instance, if I have a cat blog, I'm writing all about cats all the time, I might have a category called house cats and a subcategory called calico. And then I might have another category completely separate from those called outdoor cats or something like that. That's a terrible example, but hopefully you're understanding what I'm getting at. One of the problems with doing things on YouTube Live is I can't read your faces, and I don't know if you're rolling your eyes at me or you think the things I'm saying are funny or what. So if I say something that you think is funny, please somehow indicate that it was funny for me. So categories are a way of organizing your posts in WordPress. Another way of organizing your posts in WordPress is by using tags. So a tag is also sometimes it can be used as a noun or a verb. As a noun, it's another taxonomy, just like categories. It's a label that you can apply to posts to show that they're related to each other. But typically, they're used in a way that's more specific than categories. So using the cat blog example again, you might have categories that are things like indoor cats and outdoor cats, or calico or something like that. And those are going to describe uh, sort of the big topic areas that you're going to be writing about on your blog. But your tags might be used for more subtle more subtle uses of the of commonalities between posts, I guess. So so you have your indoor cats and outdoor cats for your categories, but your tag might be toys or food or um, I guess very specific topics that come up frequently when you're writing about cats. Uh, Again, I should have really come up with better examples before I started talking about cats. So tag can be used as a noun where we're talking about the label that's being applied to posts, and it can also be used as a verb. You can say that I am going to tag a post with this tag, for instance. So the big difference between categories and tags is in terms of scope. Categories are big picture, tags are little picture. um, and excuse me, I'm gonna have a little bit of water. Categories are big picture, tags are sort of more focused. Um, and if I think I'll show you some examples when we start working with content directly in a little bit, and I'm going to stop talking about cats. So the next vocabulary word we have here is page. And so page is a distinct content type from post, and this gets to where the newspaper example was going earlier. So a post is going to be um, the the postings in today's newspaper, today's articles, and they change from day to day. They're going to be saved forever as a reference, so you can go back and look and see on November 28th, 2018, what was happening on that day. A page is going to be more durable content that doesn't change very often. Um, so, for instance, on a newspaper website, a page might describe uh, who the editor is for the website or for the newspaper, or it might describe how to get a subscription to the newspaper, things like that. So content that doesn't change on a day-to-day basis, and when it does change, it's not very important that you save all the past versions um, and make those available to people, because nobody really cares uh, who the editor was 15 years ago. They're more interested in who the editor is now. So if that makes sense, a post is something that is linked to a particular point in time, and that point in time that it's linked to is somehow important to it. A page is going to be content that doesn't really change very often, is sort of durable content, and doesn't really have any connection to a point in time. In WordPress world, you might also sometimes hear the word widget. So a widget is a little content block, a little element that displays information in an arrangement that's going to be changeable by you, but often you're going to find them in a sidebar or in the footer of your website or something like that. You might think of them as uh, if you're thinking of sort of the classic blog from 2006 or so, you've got two columns. You've got one column that's wider that has all of your posts, and in the other column, you've got a much narrower column that has 3 or 4 sections that are links to other websites or about the author or something like that. The things in that smaller sidebar are going to be widgets in WordPress world. Another word is plugin. I've used it a couple of times already. That's an accessory software package that's used to extend the capabilities of the existing application. And so a plugin is going to be basically something that we install to go with WordPress that will give WordPress more features than it already has. So we talked about the post and page content types. You might want to have a calendar on your website and have an event content type, which is sort of a different thing than a post or a page, because maybe there's different information associated with it. And so you might install a plugin that creates that event content type. Another example might be a lot of people at NC State are somehow in a STEM field: science, technology, engineering, and math. And there's a markup language called LaTeX that's used to typeset all of the mathematical equations that you might need to publish. If you have a website where you're sharing that kind of math content, then WordPress out of the box doesn't really understand what LaTeX formatting looks like, but you can install a plugin that will then give WordPress the ability to understand that and render that properly. So all these sort of different ideas of, I have an application already available. If I need it to do something more, then you install a plugin to make it do that. Theme, the definition here, giving a particular setting or ambiance to. I didn't write that definition, and I'm not sure that I really like it. Your theme is what your website looks like. So, excuse me. So NC State and UNC both use WordPress to manage their websites, but the difference between an NC State website and a UNC website ultimately comes down to the theme. If you put the NC State theme on a UNC website, it would look like an NC State website, and it would be hard to tell from the content alone that it's not an NC State website until you start seeing, that's not a street name that's at NC State. So your theme determines your color scheme, your layout, sort of the visual identity of your website. We have a handful of NC State branded themes that are available for campus websites, uh, and then lots of other themes that aren't specifically NC State branded that can give your website a lot of different styles or sort of present your website in a different way. And so the theme that you use often says a lot about how you're expecting people to interact with your website. Even though it doesn't set functionality in and of itself, it does sort of set expectations for how people might use it. So we'll see some examples of themes in a little bit. And we have user roles. So in WordPress out of the box, we have 5 user roles. There can be more user roles created. At the very bottom of the list, we have subscriber. And a subscriber is somebody who can log in and manage their profile, and that's about it. Subscribers will be able to see any content that you mark as password protected, but they can't really do anything more than that. Up one level from a subscriber is a contributor, which is somebody who can edit posts but cannot publish them. So you might have a contributor who is a student employee, for instance. If you want them contributing to the departmental website, but you want to make sure that you or somebody else who's a full-time staff person or whatever reviews what they do before it actually gets posted, you can set them as contributors and they won't have the ability to actually publish it. An author is one level up from there. That's somebody who can publish, edit, and delete their posts, but only their posts. So using the same example, that might be a student that you trust, somebody who isn't going to post anything malicious on your website, but you don't really want to give them the ability to go messing around with other people's content on the website. Excuse me. Up a level from there is an editor. So an editor is somebody who can publish, edit, and delete anything or any content on the website. So an editor is basically an author for everybody's content rather than just for their own content. They can change categories and tags and things like that as well, rather than just having the option of choosing which category or tag they'd like to use. And then finally, an administrator is one level up from editor. An administrator can do everything an editor can do, and then also a lot more. So an administrator can change the name of the website if they choose. An administrator can change the theme or install a plugin, things like that. So I've done a lot of talking. I'm probably going to do a little bit more, but then you're going to have some hands-on time. And that's going to start with you opening up another tab or window in your web browser and going to wordpress.ncsu.edu. And I will go ahead and do that along with you. Let's see. So when you go to wordpress.ncsu.edu, you should see a web page that looks something like this. It says WordPress at NC State across the top. And starts with what is WordPress and some text in here. And then as you scroll down, you'll see your options at NC State. And we have a bunch of options right here, but the one I'm most interested in for today is the free option. So all students, faculty, and staff at NC State can create an unlimited number of WordPress websites through this service. There are limits. So for instance, everybody's URL will be of this form, myurl.wordpress.ncsu.edu. You get 300 megabytes of file space, which will be more than enough for today. You have a variety of things to choose from, and this is in a managed environment, meaning you don't have to worry about setting anything up on the server. We've taken care of all of that for you. You'll just create a site. So go ahead and click Create a Site. And this will take you to a page that asks you to log in with your Unity ID and password, and I will go ahead and do that. And you should be taken to this page here where it says create a new site. So I have some extra stuff on this page when I view it because I'm an administrator for the whole environment. But what you should see when you log in, some basic information about the service, and then guidelines about branding. So the key thing to know here is that if you are creating a website for official university communications in this service, you need to follow university communications brand guidelines. Um, for this workshop today, nothing you're creating is going nothing you're creating meets the threshold of official university communications. But if you come back to the service to create a departmental blog or a personal website that you're using to communicate to students or something like that, you might need to think about how you're branding and how consistent you need to be with branding guidelines. If you're doing this, if you're using this service just for personal use, which you absolutely can, then you don't need to worry about those branding guidelines. And we have a couple thousand websites in this service right now, ranging from official, this is where we keep our documentation for our processes or for our meeting notes for our team meetings, to very unofficial student blogs. We get a lot of study abroad blogs or class projects, things like that. And obviously, those sorts of things don't need to be university branded. You'll also see a section here about accessibility requirements. So you may hear me talk about accessibility a few times during the course of this presentation. Uh, accessibility is really just about making sure that anybody and everybody can access information, including and especially people who have disabilities. So most of the themes and plugins that you'll see available at NC State have been designed in a way to make sure that whatever you put into your website is exposed to screen reading software and other assistive technology that people with disabilities might be using. But there are some best practices that you might need to follow to make sure your content that you create is accessible to everybody. And I'll talk about a few of those as we go. If you have used this service before, you might see some links listed here. If you have used WordPress but not through this service, you won't see anything here because you're probably using WordPress in some sort of self-hosted web server or something like that somewhere else on campus. But I would like everybody to go down to new site information right here and go ahead and create a website. So I'm going to name my website EP Decani November 2018. I'm naming it that because I've created a lot of these, and if I don't name it something like that, it'll tell me you've already created a website named this. Go ahead and name your website whatever you want to name it. Just for this field right here, this will be the URL for your website. Whatever you put in here, .wordpress.ncsu.edu, and whatever you put in here needs to be just lowercase letters and numbers and nothing else. So that first field, site domain, is going to be what people type into their browser to get to this website. I'm going to now name my website, which can be anything you want, and this will be the text that appears across the top. So I'm going to name my website Brian's Amazing Website. Hooray. So that will be the name of my website. Beneath there, we have the option of choosing our privacy settings. So a public setting means that anybody can go to your website and view it at any time. And that eventually, the longer it sits on the internet, it'll be picked up by Google and Bing and other search engines. The next level down from there is search engine blocked. And so if you block search engines, that means that your website is public to anybody who has the URL, who knows to go there, but the search engines like Google and Bing will never see it and never list it in their search results. You can also set it so that visitors must be able to log in. So here that's going to be anybody who has a Unity ID and password in NC State. You can set it so it's only administrators. So the first administrator for your website will just be you. And then also certain OIT staff are super administrators for this service in case there are any issues. And then you can add more administrators if you'd like to. And then finally, you have the option of setting sort of a site-wide password. Anybody who visits the website has to know to type in whatever password you'd like to put in there. I don't really care if people see my website, so I'm not going to password protect anything, but I also don't really want Google to start indexing it for their search results. So I'm going to mark mine right here as search engine blocked and create my website. So I have my site domain, all lowercase letters and numbers, .wordpress.ncsu.edu, and I don't need to type in that part. That's right over here. I have my website title, and now I'm going to go ahead and click Create Site. Okay, and so now my website has been created. So my URL right here is what I put in, bpdcounty November 2018.wordpress.ncsu.edu, and then I can follow this login link and log in with my Unity ID and password. I'm going to wait right here and give folks a chance to do that and let me know if they run into any issues in the Q&A document. So we have a question from Chris. How do we delete a website? Um, so if he says, if I want to delete this practice site, for instance. So there are two ways you can do it. The first way is an option in the WordPress dashboard under Tools. And then if you have trouble finding that, or if that doesn't work for some reason, you can always email help@ncsu.edu and we can delete it for you. That just might take a day or two. Let's see. It looked like somebody else may have typed something. Uh, okay, it looks like everybody's doing okay. So yeah, I don't see any other problems. Wave your hand if I'm missing you, but I'll go ahead and dive into my website. So I'm going to start by clicking on this link right here, BPD County, November 2018. This will take me to my website. And this is Brian's amazing website. Hooray. We start everybody off by default in an NC State theme that you have the option of changing. And out of the box, you get a post that is sort of a default starter post that you can go ahead and delete whenever you want. I've clicked on this post now so I can read the whole thing. It says, hello world. It says it's by me. If this is your first time using the service, it might say by your Unity ID rather than your first name and last name because you haven't configured your user account yet. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. We see that it has my basic blog post text. This is the text that goes with the post. And then it has one comment underneath as a starter comment. So I'm going to go back to my home page and point out a few things that are important. First, with the starter theme, down in the bottom right-hand corner, we have all of your normal NC State website links to the homepage, accessibility information, privacy information, and so on. And then right here we have a login or logout link. This is not universally true for all WordPress websites. This is a choice that this theme makes to give you that login, logout link right there. But for right now, since you are in this theme, that means that if you log out of the service and come back to your website, you'll see that login link right there to get back into it. Across the top up here, you should see a toolbar that has a bunch of different buttons you can push to do different things with your website. So first of all, over in the right-hand corner, we have your user information, giving you the option to log out or edit your profile as a user. Don't worry about that right now. That's just something that you can go to if you need to log out or change user information. And the next one over from the right is labeled Report a Problem to OIT. So if you're working with your website and you find something that's not quite right or you're running into an issue, you can always click that, and that will take you to a form that will contact my team in OIT. This is something that's available on websites that OIT manages. It is not something that's available on every WordPress website. For obvious reasons, we don't support every WordPress website everywhere, but it's something that should be available if you're one of our clients, if you're using a service like this one, and so on. You probably don't see security there for lots of reasons. I'm a super administrator, so I have extra powers, but you might see this little new toolbar right here, which lets you create a new post or a page or other options like that. You've got some commenting information and a few other things. But the one I'm really interested in right here is where you have the name of your website across the top. When you hover over it, it opens up this drop down right here. But if you just click on your site name, that will take you to the WordPress dashboard. And the WordPress dashboard is sort of, you can think of it as the back end of your website, under the hood, behind the scenes, where all the action happens. When you are at the dashboard, if you need to visit the front end of your website to see what things look like, you can go back to the exact same spot where it has the name of your website. You can click that, and that will take you to your homepage. So this will toggle you back and forth between the front and the back of your website. Here in the dashboard, we have here in the dashboard, we have a bunch of different things to look at. The main section of the page is taken up with these dashboard modules that give you information about WordPress or about your website. So for instance, the latest news from the WordPress world is over here. How many posts you've published and when the last one was that you published it is over here. And then right down here in this service, sometimes we might make announcements. So when an earlier version of WordPress came out that had some privacy related information, we made an announcement right here to users of this service. We also have this service configured so that it will track basic analytics information using Google Analytics. If you're not seeing anything in here, that's because probably nobody has visited your website. And that's not surprising because you just created your website. This is something that we have turned on for the websites that we manage. Other websites on campus or other websites out in the world might have something different, might not have this turned on at all, but you might see something sort of similar to this. Over in the left-hand side, you have the dashboard menu. So this is where you can do all of the things that you need to do with your WordPress website. You have your posts, which is the post content type we talked about. You have media, which is your media library if you upload images or PDFs or other file types. It does not support every file type, but it does support many file types. Just below that, we have pages, which is the other content type that we talked about, and comments, which if you have a blog and you have commenting turned on, then people from out in the world can leave you little messages. and 9 times out of 10, it's probably spam from somebody. So that's why more and more we're all just turning comments off. Beneath there, we have appearance, which is where you can change your theme. It's where you can do some customization for your website. You can set set up your widgets in your sidebar or your footer or other widget areas. You can select menus, and then some themes have more theme options for customizing as well. Beneath there, you have plugins, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Users for managing your users, adding other people to be able to add content to your website. Tools, and so right here under tools, this is where the delete the site option is if you want to delete your practice website for today. Although please don't delete it right now, because I want to talk to you about more things about your website, and you'd have to go back and create another one. This is also where you can go if you want to import content into your website or export it so that you can use it somewhere else. So if you create a website in this service, excuse me, you put all of your favorite cat pictures and all of your favorite cat writing on your NC State WordPress blog, and then you get a job somewhere else and you have to leave NC State, if you can take that information with you by clicking export, and you'll get a single file that you can then take and import into another WordPress website. And then you have settings right here. Settings will give you the option to change the name of your website, change what the homepage is. You can select a different page for the homepage and things like that. And I might have some settings that the rest of you don't have, because again, I have extra special administrative powers. So let's go ahead and get started with a post. So if we go to all posts, we'll see the demo post that comes with WordPress. I would like to create a new post. So I'm going to go up to the top by posts and click add new. And this will open up the WordPress visual editor. So I'm going to just demonstrate with some quick typing. Probably going to spell things wrong, so please, don't judge too harshly. My first post. This is my post. Okay, so if you have ever written an email in Gmail, you're probably going to get the hang of the content editor right here. It's very similar to 1,000 other things that you'll find on the internet. You have your title for your post at the very top. I do recommend that you give every post and every page a title. That's going to be important for lots of reasons, including determining what your URL for your post or page is. And so you can see the URL for this post is just underneath. It's labeled as permalink. So it's permanent link to this post. And the link to this post is http:// the name or the domain that I selected for my website, bpdecani November 2018.wordpress.ncsu.edu/ and then the date of today's post, 2018/11/28, and then slash, and then it's taken my title up here and converted it into a simpler URL representation of my title. So you'll notice that it's all lowercase, the spaces have been replaced by dashes, and if I had other punctuation in my title up here, that would be stripped out as well, because that other punctuation can't appear in the URL. Let's say I give my post a very long name, something like my first post, isn't it great? Blogging is tons of fun. So if I gave my post a name like that, WordPress would by default take all of that text and convert it into the URL. If I were to go ahead and publish it, since it hasn't been published before, that would be what it would set to. But maybe I don't want a ridiculously long URL that people are going to have to type out. I can go ahead and click edit, And that edit button will give me the option of changing just the part of my URL that corresponds with the post title. So maybe I just want it to be something simple like first post. I click OK. And now when I publish this post, that will be the URL for that post. This is something that people will oftentimes just overlook, but it's one of the best ways of earning some goodwill from your users, giving them short URLs that they don't have to type something really, really long. Down here, we have the main body of your post. And at the very top, we have this editor toolbar that gives you the different ways that you can style your content. So I'll go ahead and make some stuff bold. So I'll select some text and make it bold. I'll make some things italicized. I'll go ahead and add a bulleted list. And I can make items in a bulleted list sub-items by tabbing, pushing tab, and now it indents it in within the item above it. I can change my alignment, so I'll go ahead and change the alignment, and so the paragraph that I was in is now centered. And I can highlight text and turn it into a hyperlink. If I highlight it and then go to this little button here that looks like chain links and type in my URL, and hit enter, and now this will be a link to the OIT website. One of the other things you can do is when you make something a link, you can search for a page or a post that's already in your website. So there's a demo post that comes with WordPress called Hello World. So if I start typing hello, WordPress will search for it and ask, do I want to link to Hello World? And so this way I don't need to know what the URL is for it if it's part of this website already. I just know the name of the page or the post that I want to link to. And I can go ahead and say, yes, that's the one, and it will insert my URL right there. So all of this should be pretty straightforward. There are more options available in the content editor up here. If you go to the last button that's labeled toggle toolbar, and this will give you another row of icons that you can select from. There are a few that are really handy. Clear formatting right here will let you select text, and if you clear formatting, it will undo whatever it was that you had done before. I'm going to make it bold again. You have your undo button and your redo button. And then if you are a power user and you never want to touch your mouse, there are shortcuts that are available for making things bold or creating headings or things like that. I mentioned headings. Headings are very important to me. So over in this little drop down right here where it says paragraph, if you click on that, you'll see various heading levels that have different sizes and styles for the font. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what headings are for and what they're not for. The first thing that headings are for is for giving structure to your content on a web page. So if I have a section within my blog post, I can give it a section heading, and I can take this text and make it a heading 2. So my title up here will automatically be a heading 1. Now I've got a section heading, which is a heading 2, and I have more text here. And if I have another section within that section, so a sort of a subsection, that will be a heading 3. So I can select that text and make that a heading 3. More stuff down here. And then if I have a section that's at the same level as my section my first section, I can make that another section heading at level 2. So this is a way of providing structure to your content. If you think back to high school English class where you had to do outlining for your 5-page paper or whatever that you had to write for English, the the headings are the sort of the same way you would structure it as you would in that sort of outline for a paper. The headings give you information about what each piece is about. Headings tell you we're transitioning from one topic to another topic now, things like that. And then having headings within headings tells you something about the relationship. So whatever is in my subsection is somehow related to the section that it's within. You'll also notice that the headings change the style of the text. So my section heading 2 is much bigger text than the text above it and below it. There's a temptation to use headings to just style text. So if I've got something really important, I want to make it big and want to make it bold. That temptation is something that you should fight. So anytime you use heading tags, you are telling the web browser information about the structure of your page or post. That structure then gets communicated implicitly to users who are reading it and viewing, okay, this is bigger and this is bolder, so that tells me that this is a new section. But it's also being communicated very explicitly to users who are using assistive technology like screen reader software or things like that, who don't necessarily have the same visual clues or visual cues to recognize. So this is bigger and bolder, but it's not actually meant to be a new section. It's just meant to be important information. So if you misuse headings, what you can end up with is a web page that's actually very confusing to use if you are using screen reading software. What seems like should be a new section isn't actually a section. It gets to be very hard to navigate or to scan through to find what you're looking for. So don't use headings just to change the appearance. You might notice that there aren't really other ways of styling the text to make it bigger, make it look more important right now. And that's where the question that Kim asked at the very beginning comes in, which is, will this be about WordPress as it is now or about Gutenberg? So in the next version of WordPress is a new content editor called Gutenberg that will give innumerably many more options for styling text, styling content, creating multi-column layouts, things like that. Gutenberg is going to be an extremely powerful tool, and if we have time before we wrap things up at 4 o'clock, I'll give you a little demo and give you a way that you can create your own test site to get some practice with it. But it's not quite ready yet, and it has some issues with it that make us a little hesitant to roll it out in our Canvas environments. But it's coming next year, and it's going to be an exciting new thing. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and it will probably take a little bit of time to figure out how things work. And we actually offer some other training workshops all about Gutenberg and preparing for Gutenberg. So go ahead and check our website and reporter.ncsu.edu to look for things like that when you're ready to. But in the meantime, the best thing you can do in terms of styling your content in the poster page editor is to use headings to express the structure of your content rather than using them to style the visual output. So if you have any questions about headings or accessibility in general, please let me know. This is something I am delighted to talk about, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it right now. I can swing back to it if there's time at the end, or you can always stop by office hours or send me an email or something like that. So So far, we've added text. We've done some styling with it. We've added section headings. One thing that you might want to do is insert some media items. So for that, I can go to Add Media, and this brings up the media library. Since this is a brand new website, we don't have anything in the media library. So I can go ahead and upload, and I have some images on my computer. I have lots of images on my computer, mostly screenshots. Let's see what else we have. Okay, this will do okay. So next week will be an email coming out to everybody about the holiday energy setback initiative. So I helped prepare that email that you'll be receiving next Monday. So you get a little sneak preview. In that email will be an image of a calendar, and I will go ahead and use that as my demo image right here. And actually, this is a really good image to use too. So I've uploaded my image of a calendar right here, and you see a little thumbnail preview of what it looks like. Over here, we have some information about the image. So we have the file name, HESI calendar 2018_01.jpg. We have the date that it was uploaded. We have its file size, 146 kilobytes. And then we have its dimension. Then we have its dimensions in pixels. So this is 650 pixels wide and 617 pixels tall. Just beneath this, there are two links, an edit link and a delete link. If I click edit, this will open up a very rudimentary image editing tool that comes with WordPress. This tool is not terrible if you just need to do some quick cropping, but generally speaking, if you need to use Photoshop, you should use Photoshop or some other image editing tool. WordPress does lots of things really well and some things just kind of okay, and editing images is one of those things that it does just kind of okay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the image editor. I just want you to know that it's there and it's available to you if you need it. And then deleting permanently will delete the image from your website. Then under here, we have some basic metadata about the image. Okay, so we have somebody saying, I can't upload Adobe Illustrator files. So WordPress by default doesn't support all file types. There are some files that WordPress will reject because it doesn't recognize them, and some files that it will reject because it does recognize them, and sometimes they're used to carry viruses. If you're trying to upload an Adobe Illustrator file, that's probably because WordPress doesn't recognize it, and you would need a plugin to sort of give it the ability to recognize that. If you are using this service, wordpress.nccu.edu, and you need to upload Illustrator files or something like that, you can reach out to us and we can figure out what the right solution is for you. But in terms of images, WordPress does support JPEG, PNG, GIF, and a handful of other images, I think TIF and a few others, and then you can use those. It also supports PDFs, Word documents, Excel files, things like that, other things that you might need to share to a wider audience. So over here, we have information about our image. So first we have the URL for the image. That's not something you can change, but it is something you can select and copy. So if you need to give somebody a direct URL to just this file rather than showing it in the page, that's how you can share it with them. Then we have the title. So this is the name of the image that you'll use if you're looking to see, if you're looking for images in your media library. The title, it's a good idea to give it something descriptive so you can tell the difference between the different images that you have. If you just name everything image or image 1, image 2, image 3, that's not going to be very useful. So I will go ahead and change the title, which is the file name by default. I'll change the title to Energy Setback Calendar 2018-2019. So now the next time I come to my media library, I'll be able to recognize exactly what this is. The next item you have here is your caption. So if you'd like to have text display beneath your image when you insert it into the page, then you can type in your caption right here. I'll go ahead and give it a caption of energy setback calendar. Sometimes your caption might be the same as your title. Sometimes it will be something longer and more descriptive. So if you think about a newspaper or a magazine, when they have an image, a lot of the time the caption will be like a short paragraph describing what's happening in the image. But if it's purely decorative, maybe it's just the image credit, like the name of the photographer and the copyright date or something like that. If you go down one more, you go to the alt text. And so this is another item that's important for accessibility, and that is giving a text equivalent to the contents of the image. So if you are somebody who cannot see and you're using screen reading software, the screen reading software, when it encounters an image, it is not smart enough to figure out what's supposed to be happening in the image. Instead, it will read whatever the alt text is that's associated with the image. Alt text is a little bit tricky. Very long alt text can overwhelm the screen reader. So think of it as an old style tweet about 140 characters, plus or minus a little bit. So if you give your image alt text, try to make it concise and descriptive, and make sure it's describing what's being communicated by the image. So if I have a picture of two people shaking hands, the alt text might read Brian DeConnick and Jen McFarland shaking hands, or something like that. That's the information that the user should be getting from the image. If it's something much more complex, for instance, the energy setback calendar that I'm using as my example right here, there's no way I'll be able to describe everything that's included in the calendar just in 140 characters. In my image, as we'll see in a moment, there's more text in the image than 140 characters. So it would not be possible to describe that. So one thing you can do is give it alt text that says something like energy setback calendar, contents described below, and then make sure that in your post you include text that describes what's in the image. That might feel a little bit redundant, but it's actually very helpful for basically all of your users. So if you have complex information being expressed in an image, whether it's a chart or a graph or a calendar or something with a lot of detail or nuance, our accessibility coordinator likes to use images from textbooks that show like the water cycle, for instance. Just looking at the image, even for somebody who is able to see, does not have a disability, just looking at the image might not communicate everything that needs to be communicated about it, because there's lots of detail to look at. And so reiterating the important parts in text near or just beneath the image is going to help everybody. So I'll go ahead and insert my alt text as the 2018-2019 energy setback calendar, contents described below. And so that will, excuse me, that text that I just typed will be what's read to a user who's using screen reading software. And then they'll be cued to know that after the image, they should be listening for a description of what's in the image. If you are using an image that is purely decorative, you are not expecting anybody to learn anything from it. It's just a picture of somebody sitting under a tree reading a book, which is sort of the sort of thing you expect to see on lots of college websites, just eye candy. Then you can take the alt text field and leave it completely blank. WordPress will format your image tag so that it has empty alt text, and that's a cue to the screen reader to skip over it and say, this is not important, this is purely decorative, I don't need to tell the user anything about it. This example that I'm using right here, this calendar, is clearly not purely decorative. There's actual information being communicated. So it's important to include some sort of alt text to that effect. The last field here is labeled description. And this one is a little bit trickier. You can type a lot more in the description field. It's not just 140 characters, but this description field is not, is not exposed in the same way as the alt text. Sorry about that. It's not exposed in the same way as the alt text to the users who are visiting your website. So when you when you type things into the description field, you can say a lot more about it. And some themes will then present that description text as sort of an optional more information for screen reader users. Some themes will also make that description text available on sort of a dedicated page for that image that you're sharing on a different page, so people can click on the image to go to that page and read more about the image. Description text is a little, there's some nuance to it. So if you have questions about it, if you have something that's especially complex and you're trying to figure out the right way to describe it, that's definitely a time to reach out to us or reach out to the accessibility coordinator and figure out the right way to do it. For now, I'm going to leave my description text alone, and I'm going to go down to the attachment display settings. Under attachment display settings, you have three options. Alignment, I can have it be left, centered, or right. I'm going to go ahead and align it to the right. I can set it to link to somewhere. So I have three options: my media file, my attachment page, and my custom URL. Media file will just take you to the image all by itself with nothing else around it, just a direct link to that file. So if you click on the image, it'll go to that image all alone. Attachment page will take you to that page that I was talking about with the description text. This is a little bit theme dependent, but most of the time, if you set it to go to the attachment page, then if you click on the image, it will go to a page that displays the image, and then also anything you typed into your description field. And then custom URL makes it so that if you click on the image, you can go to whatever URL you want people to go to with that image. So I could set a custom URL of the Energy Setback Initiative website, for instance. I'm going to go ahead and select media file. And then just below there, we have options for the size of my image. Different themes have different sizes available. I'm going to stick with the default right here, my medium size. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and insert this image into my post. So after a moment to think about it, you'll see it's been inserted. It's at the medium size that I requested, and it's right aligned, so all of the text will wrap around it. And I don't have a whole lot of text, so I can show you more text. So much text. I'm tired of typing. Here's more. Go. I'm just going to start copying and pasting now. This is going to last forever. So, so we can see that near the image, when it sort of ran into the containing element for the image, the sort of empty box around it, the text jumped to a new line. But once it gets below the image, sufficiently below the image, then the text will be the full length. So the image will sort of sit nicely in this nook within the content. So if I decide, after all, I want it to be left aligned instead, I can click on the image, and I have these options right here to change my alignment. I'll go ahead and align it to the left, and all of my content shifts with it. You can also center align it. I'm going to put it back in the right, though. And then if I decide I want to change the alt text, for instance, or change what I want to say about the image in all of that metadata, I can go in here, I can change the caption, I can change the alt text, I can change where it's linking to, and so on. So if I want to make it bigger, I can choose another size, or I can choose a custom size and type in the pixels that I want the width and height to be. Let's see, we have somebody asking a question. When I click the image, I get the menu above it to change it. But when I try to click on one of the choices, it just blinks and won't let me choose. Won't let me choose anything. That's interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. So that's not a very useful answer for you right now. It might be something specific to that image, or it might be some sort of quirk with your web browser. I can't really diagnose it right this second, but feel free to reach out to me if it persists, or let's see, we have somebody saying it's the same for me. Okay. So it could also be that there's some sort of bug that I don't know about, and we need to do a little diagnosis with our WordPress installation. So thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry that's not working for you. Let me know if it changes, and we'll look into it. And feel free to email us if you have a website in this service that you want to be able to edit your image with. Let's see. You're using Chrome in case that matters. Okay. So I can't really help you right now because YouTube Live and I can't really see what's happening. But this is the fun part of doing this, I guess. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to make a note. In the meantime, let's charge forward. So I have my image inserted into my post. At this point, you might be thinking, I know how HTML works. I am a web design pro. I've been doing this for ages. I want to be able to make some very subtle customizations to the code in my post. How do I do that? And the way you would do that is you could go up to the top right-hand corner above your post content and notice that there are these two tabs, visual and text. So visual is what you've been in so far. And then text. So text is a little bit of a misnomer. What this is your filtered HTML view. So here we have my A tag for the link to the image. Here we have the image tag with all of the alt text right here, with my width and height attributes right here, all of the other markup through here. If you are not comfortable with HTML, you never have to look at this. This does not matter to you, and you can sort of ignore it for all time. If you are comfortable with HTML, you might notice that there are some things that are missing. For instance, line breaks and paragraph tags and things like that. WordPress will put those in for you automatically. There are a few other things WordPress will do automatically, and then there's some things that WordPress will filter out. So if you try to insert JavaScript, for instance, or certain kinds of custom CSS, WordPress will filter that out because there are ways those can be used to introduce security vulnerabilities. iframes, for instance, too, will be filtered out. If you want to use some of those fancier HTML tools and you know what you're doing, then reach out to us and we can give you some tools to make those available. I'm going to ignore this filtered HTML for now because it's not going to be relevant to most people, but I just want you to know that it's available if you do know what you're doing with HTML. Switching back to the visual tab, we have all of our content right here. And let's say this is my blog post and I'm happy with it. I think it's great and I want to publish. So now we have all of our options to the right here. And each of these boxes does something different. I want to focus on just the top three. The featured image one is going to be a little different depending on your theme. So I'm just going to focus on these top three for now. So first we have tags right here. We talked about categories and tags. So I'll go ahead and go back to my cat examples um, uh, and give this post some tags like food and playtime and uh, uh, what else do you do with cats? I have cats and I'm blanking right now. Toys, let's say toys. And scratching posts. So what I'm saying by tagging this post with all of these is that this post at some point talks about all of these things: food, playtime, toys, and scratching posts. Um, in my categories, now I'm going to have the much bigger picture, sort of buckets that this post fits into. And so I might give it a category of house cats and add that category. And I mentioned before that categories are hierarchical, so I can give it a category, a subcategory of calicos, and give it a parent category. Give my subcategory here the parent of house cats. Add that category, and now you'll see that calicos is slightly indented underneath house cats, and that's how WordPress represents the parent-child relationship between these categories. Generally speaking, when you're writing a blog post, the best way to do this is to give any given post 1 or 2 categories tops, maybe 3, and then as many tags as make sense. And generally speaking, you might have maybe a dozen categories for your website, maybe more, but you don't want to go too wild with categories. But tags, you can have as many tags as you could possibly want, as many topics that you might ever write about. Those are not hard and fast rules. Those are just sort of best practice things that we've found over time. And actually, I'll go ahead and plug one of our other workshops. We offer an intermediate WordPress class all about content management, where we talk about some best practices like that. And that's all I'll say about that. So I've set my tags, I've set my categories. Now up here, I'm finally ready to publish. So what are my options for publishing? First, I can save my work so far and click Save Draft, and then walk away and come back and publish it later. I'm not going to do that right now because that sort of defeats the purpose of doing this workshop. I can see what my post will look like when it's published without actually publishing it by clicking this preview button, which I'll go ahead and do. And we can see it looks basically like I expect it to look like. I've got my title right here. It's got my byline, all of the text and the image that I gave it. And if I click on the image, just like I set it to, it will go just to the image with nothing else. So I'll go ahead and close my preview. Down here, we have some options for status, visibility, and my published date. So my status, I can change it from draft to pending review. That's something that's useful if you have a workflow for multiple people working on a website, or if you have contributor level users. They can go from draft to pending review, but they can't publish all the way. So again, if you have, for instance, student workers that you want to check their work before it goes live on the departmental website, that's very useful. And you can change the status back to draft after it's been published if you realize, I didn't mean to do that so soon, I wanted to take it back. You have visibility options. So by default, it's set to public visibility. If you click on edit, you have some options here to password protect. Password protecting in this case is just giving it a sort of single password that anybody can use to access it. If you want to make something available just to NC State users using Unity ID and password login through Shibboleth, we do have a tool that's available for that. You just let us know and we can install it for you on your website if it's in one of the services that we manage. It's also available to other groups on campus. If you want to know more about that, just send us an email and we can tell you all about that. And then private is marking a page or a post as private means that it's published, but it's only visible to people who are logged in, and it's completely invisible to people who aren't logged in. So rather than having a single password that that you can type in to get access to this post, a private post, somebody who's not logged in never even knows that it's available to see. But once you log in as a subscriber, user, or something else, then you see it. I want my post to be public, so I'm going to say OK, and then publish immediately. I can set the date and the time that this will post. I can set my date to be anything I want. If I set it for something in the future and I click OK, then the text here will change to schedule for, and then the date and time. And this button, instead of saying publish, will now say schedule. If you have a planned post and you know it needs to be out next Wednesday or something like that, you can write it now, change the date to next Wednesday at the time that you want it to post, and click schedule, and WordPress will do the rest for you. You won't have to make sure you're right there to push the button at exactly the time you want it to be. You can also set it to a date that's sometime in the past. That will change the order in which posts are displayed, but it will not retroactively change time as much as I might wish it would. So you have that option as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at approximately now. And so now it says publish immediately. And I'll go ahead and click publish. All right, and now my post is published. And if I click view post, I can see it live on the website right at the URL that it said it would be at. So it's just that easy to create a post. You probably won't need to spend 40 minutes or whatever it is that I've done on creating your very first demo blog post. But I hope I've shown you lots of things that you can do with this. And then the rest of WordPress is going to go a lot faster because WordPress reuses a lot of the same user interface patterns. So let's go ahead and dive into more of WordPress. So if we go back to the dashboard, remember you can click the name of your website right at the top right here. So now I'm back on the dashboard. We spent lots of time in posts. Now let's go down to pages. So WordPress comes with a sample page. I'll go ahead and use that to start with. Actually, no, I'm going to create a new page, and I will call it another sample page. Here's some text. Pages are great. So this is exactly the same interface that you saw with posts with a few minor changes. The first thing I want to point out is that the taxonomy options you had with posts have now been replaced with this item here called page attributes. Your page attributes are your parent attribute, your template, and your order. Order I'm not going to tell you much about right now because it's not super important for what we're going to do today. Parent will give you the parent-child relationship between pages. So pages can be hierarchical, and I can go ahead and give another sample page, this page that I'm creating, a parent sample page, the page that comes with WordPress. And I'll just show you real quick what that means. When I click publish, you'll see the big difference in the URL for my new page. So when I was dealing with posts, the URL had the date embedded in it because posts are connected to a certain time when they're published, like a newspaper article. But pages are more durable. They're not connected to a given point in time. and so the information in the URL here is the hierarchical relationship between pages. So sample page is the parent page of another sample page. Maybe I should have picked different words. Sample and another sample I'm gonna trip that up over and over again. But I've made my choice. I must charge on. So my URL for this page is that relationship is expressed in this URL. So I have my base URL, which is the website URL, bpdecani November 2018.wordpress.nccu.edu / and then I have the parent page, sample-page, and then / and now I have this page, another sample page. And if I want to edit my URL, I can click edit, and like with the posts, I can change the text that's used for just the part that corresponds with the title here. I can't change anything above it. So if I created a third page and made that page a child of this one, then it would be another level in this URL, another / and then the name, and another and another and another if I keep going down that hierarchy. This is something that's incredibly useful for organizing content. So a lot of people, without even thinking about it, will look at the URL in their browser and look at it for clues about how things are related to each other. So if you see on a website, you might have some department.ncsu.edu / about / our faculty or something like that. And that's expressing some information, some sort of relationship between first your department, and then information about the department, and then information about the faculty about the department. So this is a subtle way of organizing content. It's very helpful for giving users clues, and it's going to help you find content more easily in the WordPress dashboard. So if we go back to our all pages view, you can see that another sample page right here is shown beneath the sample page and with this little dash underneath to indent it and show you that it's related to sample page. And this is similar to the indentation that you saw with categories earlier, indicating the hierarchy. It's a way of of showing you this page here is connected to the other page. That's really helpful if you have a large website with lots and lots of content, because if you have 1,000 pages, you need all the help you can get to find the page that you're looking for. I'll go ahead and go back to another sample page right here and show you the other page attribute that's useful, which is the template attribute. And so this is connected to the theme that you're using. Your theme will define which templates are available to you. By default, it will start with a default template. If you're using a theme that doesn't have any page templates besides the default template, this option won't be there. But I can go ahead and select the template that I want that's available in this theme. So this theme comes with several. It comes with full width and left sidebar and right sidebar, and then variations on each of those where the title is hidden so that it's a little bit of a cleaner display. So my default is the same as the right sidebar, and we can view it right here. We have my content and then the sidebar over here. If I go back and I select left sidebar instead and update, now when I view my page, the sidebar is over here on the left. It's just that easy. You can choose whichever page template you'd like. Some themes have much more complicated page templates, or page templates that make more dramatic changes to how things are styled, whether it's a different color scheme or a different layout or something like that. For this theme, it's relatively simple, where the sidebar is placed or if there's no sidebar. So that's pages in a nutshell. There's not a whole lot more to them than you need to than you would need to worry about with pages or with posts. I will mention a couple of things. So first, the published on date over here is something you can still edit just like you could with posts, and That means that if you change the published on date to sometime in the future, that will effectively unpublish this page, and then it will be republished when that date and time is reached. If you have seasonal content on your website, so for instance, a class that's only offered in the fall or something like that, that might be something you can leverage to only show the content when it needs to be shown. The other thing I would like to show you is if I make a change to my page, and this is true for posts too. Here's some more stuff. And I update. Now you'll see another line in this publish box here that says revisions. And my revisions line will tell me how many times this page has been changed and will give me the option of browsing those revisions. So if I click browse, I'll be taken to this view that shows me plain HTML or filtered HTML views, side-by-side comparisons of the current version of my page and the one immediately prior to it on the left. And if I scroll back, that will show me the immediately prior version and what was before that, which was nothing because it's a brand new page. WordPress by default will keep a full revision history for the rest of time. So if you edit a page 10,000 times, you can scroll back through 10,000 different versions. Your web administrator, if you use OIT, that's us, may sometimes remove some old revisions if you really do have 10,000 versions, because that's a lot of information being stored on the web server. But generally speaking, WordPress revision history is incredibly useful for undoing mistakes or figuring out when something happened. So for instance, if you do have student employees and you are concerned about vandalism, one of the great things about WordPress is you'll know exactly which user did it and when they did it, and you can always roll back to whatever the version of the web page was immediately before the change that they made. So revision history is great, and that's one of the things that makes WordPress very easy to use and very forgiving, is that even when things go wrong, there's always a way to get back to what you had before. So those are our two main content types, posts and pages. We've talked about the media library in the context of adding media to a post or page, but you can also manage the content, manage the images directly through the media view. So here's the image that I uploaded earlier and all the same options that we had before. And it will actually tell me that this image was uploaded to this particular post. My first post, isn't it great? And it will give me a link to go to that post if I want to edit that post. That's also helpful because that way, if I feel like I have too much stuff in my media library and I need to clean things out, I can see, well, I better not delete this image because it's being used in this post. Those are your main types of content. So now let's get to some of the more fun WordPress pieces for managing what your website looks like and how it behaves. So what it looks like will go, I'm going to do this in an out of order way. First, I'm going to go to menus. So menus will control the navigation bar at the top or in other places on your website. So I'm going to go back to the front end view of the website. This looks like a pretty typical NC State website, but you might expect navigation links right in here, and there's nothing there. So if I go back to my menus view, WordPress gives you the ability to create menus that go into those spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and name my menu, my first menu. Whatever you name the menu isn't important. It's just a way of categorizing them and organizing them so that you know which one it is. So I'll go ahead and create my menu. And by default, WordPress has pre-populated it with my homepage link and then two more links to my sample pages. And down here under menu settings, I can choose where I want to add it. So my theme has a single display location defined called primary menu. Different themes have more locations. So I can choose my primary menu, save it, and now when I go to my front-end view of the web page or the website, I have those navigation links just as they were selected. If I go back, I have more options. So suppose another sample page, I want it to be in a drop-down beneath my sample page. The way I can do that is I can grab onto it right here, and I can just tug it a little bit over to the right and let go. And just like the page hierarchy, just like the category hierarchy, WordPress indicates this relationship by indenting it a little bit over to the right. So now when I save my menu and go back to my website, I'll see that I just have two items here, my homepage link and my sample page item, and then a little arrow here that indicates the dropdown. And my another sample page right here is in the dropdown. Different themes will have different behavior for their navigation menus. So this theme, the way it's set up by default is that this top level item here, clicking it will only toggle on and off the dropdown. You can't actually click this link to get to the sample page. There are a variety of reasons why this theme was built that way that I'm not going to get into, but this is a particular choice for this theme. Other themes work slightly differently. If I go back to my menus, and I'm just looking real quick, I don't think I missed any questions, but please feel free to ask questions. So if I go back to my menus and I decide I really want my link to another sample page to be a top level item, but I don't want the text to say another sample page, even though that's the name of the page. I can expand this and change what the navigation label is. So instead of another sample page, if I just want it to be another page, I can change that, save my changes, and then go to my website, and I see that change is now in place. Now it just says another page. You can add just about any content from WordPress, any posts or pages or other things that might be available into this menu space. So if I go to my posts right here, I can choose my Hello World post and add it to my menu, and it shows up right here. And if I want to move it to a different spot, I can just click and drag and drop it in right here. I can also create a custom link. So if I want to send people to the OIT website, I can enter the URL and the text that I want to display, add it to the menu, and then move it wherever I want it to go. There are a few things that are hidden by default. So let's say I want to send people to the OIT website and I want it to open in a new tab when they go to the OIT website. So right here, I have this checkbox that says open link in new tab. It's possible you don't have that checkbox. So certain items are hidden by default. And the way you can expose that checkbox is if you go up to screen options over in the top right-hand corner, click on that to open it up. And then here are some of the extras, your advanced menu properties that you can display. So I have link target that determines the open in a new tab or not displaying. You can also turn on and off title attributes, CSS classes, and a few other items. Most of the time, you won't need most of these. If you know what you're doing with CSS classes and your description text and things like that, then you know what you're doing with those, but the rest of the time you can just leave those alone. So now if I go ahead and save my menu, all of those changes that I've made should be on the front end of my website. As we move down the WordPress dashboard, well, I had a couple more things in here that I want to talk about, didn't I? So we have widgets. So these are those little blocks of something, little blocks of content that you can drop into different places in your website. So often you see them in sidebars, but you might also see them in your footer or different places like that as defined by the theme you're using. So if I open up my footer in the leftmost column, I can go ahead and choose from my available widgets. So let's say I want just a text widget, so I can grab my text widget right here and drop that into my footer on the left. I can type whatever text I want. And then when I save and go back to my website, now you'll see that widget that I just created is down here in the footer. Just like with the menus, this is all drag and drop. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. If you heard a little rustle just then, I was using cat examples earlier because I do have cats and I'm doing this from home, and a cat just ran across my keyboard. So that might happen more. They've woken up. If you have cats, if if you have cats, you know that when they wake up, all sorts of things can happen. So just like with menus, these are all drag and droppable. You can move them to reorder them and put them wherever you want them to go. Different themes will have theme options associated with them. So this theme has some options for how wide it displays, whether it's a widescreen or a boxed layout, styling for how the header is displayed, the top, things like that. These are all very NC Statey options for this theme, whether or not to have the little fundraising sticker at the top, and so on. If you want to use a different theme, you can go to Themes, and you can see all of the themes that are available on this website. And let's say I want to go with my independent publisher theme right here. I can click on it to read more about the theme, see a little preview of what it might look like. But if I want to see what it would look like with my content, I can click Live Preview, and that will show me what the website would look like if I were to activate this theme. It also gives me many of those theme options that we talked about before over in the left-hand side, so I can try setting up the options that are available to customize what I want it to look like. If I'm happy with this, I can go ahead and click Activate and Publish. There are lots of different themes that are available, but let's say that I've tried them all and I want this one. Now when I go to my widgets, you'll see that the widget areas that I have available are different. And my footer widgets that I inserted before have now disappeared. And my footer widget that I inserted before has been moved down into the inactive widgets section down here. And that's just WordPress saying the place where you put this has disappeared. I don't want you to lose any of the text you put in. So I'm just going to hold this down here, and you can drag it and drop it into whatever place it needs to go now. There are lots of different styles to themes. I recommend you spend a little time playing with them, poking around with them, just to see the breadth of what's possible in web design and with WordPress. In this environment right here, we have, I think, 20 or 22 themes available. There are tens of thousands available in the WordPress.org theme directory. And then if you're looking for things that are NC State styled, we do have a few of those available. Hillsborough, which was built by OIT, Riddick, which was built by the College of Engineering, and the NC State WordPress theme, which was built by University Communications. I have a lot of respect for our friends in University Communications, but they're not super creative when they name the things they build. All of these are available as options. There's no right theme to use. It's all just how you want to display your content, what kind of look and feel you're looking for. So I've gone a little bit longer on some things than I expected. So that's all I'm going to say about themes so that I can spend some time on plugins. So plugins, you might remember before, are the little software packages that we add to WordPress to give us more options, to give us more things that we can do with WordPress to add new features. There are some plugins in here that you don't have available to you, but you should have at least some plugins available to you when you view this view. For instance, you might see the Google Doc embedder. I think that's available to everybody. I hope it is because I'm talking about it. So Google Doc Embedder gives you the ability to take anything you've uploaded to Google Drive or to your Google Docs and embed it. So as like a PDF file or something like that, embed it into a poster page so that people can view it there. Earlier I mentioned LaTeX, which is the mathematical typesetting syntax, and that's available for you to use in your WordPress website if you click activate. So I'll go ahead and activate this. And so now when I go to a page and edit my page content, I can put in mathematical equations, and WordPress will know in this LaTeX syntax, and WordPress will know how to display it. So I'll go ahead and do, let's see if I remember how this works. I plus 1 equals 0. Math major in college, but it's been a little while. So let's see if this works. So on the back end, in my post, I have this this sort of funky LaTeX notation with my curly brackets and my extra characters. But now when I view my page, there we go. It displays as a nicely rendered mathematical equation. And so this is an example of WordPress not knowing how to do something, and then we install a plugin and it gives it that ability. So there are uncountable things that you could do with plugins, and we have a lot of plugins that have been built just for NC State. If you're interested in seeing some of those, or if there are things that you think you'd like your website to be able to do that it can't do right now, that's a conversation that you start with either your web support team or with us in OIT, and we can try to find the right solution for you. Either something that we've built that communicates with a campus system, or something that somebody out in the plugin ecosystem has built. The thing about plugins that other people have built is that it's somebody else's code and you don't know what they did with it. So you want to make sure that before you add something, it's been vetted by somebody who has made sure that it works, it does what you're hoping it will do, and it's not going to install malware on your website. If you're using an environment that OIT manages, my team does that kind of vetting. If you're self-hosting your website, you'll want to either vet it yourself or find somebody who knows how to vet it. So that's a crash course in plugins. There's not a lot more I can say about it because every plugin is a little bit different, and you can do lots of different things with plugins. So very briefly, we're a little low on time, so if you need to drop out right at 4 o'clock, I totally understand, but I'm just going to keep talking for probably another 5 or 10 minutes. Beneath plugins, now we have the users menu. So I mentioned earlier the user roles that are available. We can add whoever we want to be a user on this website. There are a couple of caveats with that. In the WordPress.ncsu.edu environment, we only allow NC State users. So if you have people who are not at NC State that you want to be able to help with this website, This service will not work for you, but other services on Canvas might. If you are adding a new user, this is an area where WordPress is a little bit clunky. In a managed environment like this, somebody who has a website in this environment but is not a part of your website is considered by WordPress to be an existing user, and somebody who is a brand new user who's never logged into wordpress.nccu.edu is considered to be a new user. What that really means is if you don't know if somebody already has an account in here, under add existing user, just start typing their username, and if it pops up and with an autocomplete, then you know they're there. If it doesn't pop up, then you can go to add new user. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my boss, JM Really, and I start to type her username, and it pops up right here, JM Really. And so it auto-completes, and I know that she's a user in this network. And I can choose whatever role I want to give for her. I can make her a subscriber, which means she can't do anything except log in and view things. I can make her a contributor, an author, an editor, or an administrator. Administrator is the same role that I have for this website. I'm going to go ahead and make her an author. I want her to be able to create content and publish it, but I don't want her to be able to change the content that I've created. So I'll go ahead and add her to the website. And now if I go back to all users, I see that she is listed right here alongside me, and I see her role over here as administrator, or rather I see my role as administrator and her role as author. You'll notice that the two of us, we have super admin listed here because we are administrators of this environment. Most of the time you won't see that in the people who you add to your website. You can add as many users as you want to. If you really wanted to go through and make everybody in NC State a subscriber, you could go ahead and do that. It's not really necessary, but but you could do that, and and you can remove users or change their role fairly easily. So I'm going to go ahead and check Jen right here, go to change role to, and make her an editor, give her a little bit more power, and click change. And when it refreshes, now she will be an editor. As I skip down to the settings menu, there are lots of settings through here, but there are just a couple that I want to talk about. The first one is the general settings. And this is where you can set your site title and tagline. So your site title is what displays right here and what displays at the top of your website. So if I just want it to be Brian's Amazing Website without the hooray, I can go ahead and remove it. You'll see that this changes immediately. That's sort of a preview of the change that you're making, but you do have to scroll down and click Save Changes for that to actually stick. Tagline, some themes will display it, some themes won't. This is sort of a brief description of what your website is for. Email address. This is the email address of the person who is the owner of the website, whoever is the administrator. If you create this website but want to hand it off to somebody else, you can create them as an admin user, and then they can remove you as an admin. But if you don't remove your website or your email address right here, if you don't change it to somebody else, then the excuse me, then if there's ever an issue with the website, OIT will still contact you with your email address field right here because it's your name on the website. We think of you as the owner, even if you're not an administrator for it anymore. You can change the language of your website. So this doesn't change the front-facing content. If you typed it in English, it'll still be in English. But if you'd like the interface that you're using right here to be in a different language, you can go ahead and choose a different language. One of the reasons WordPress is as popular as it is worldwide is because it has such great language support. It does not have every language in the world, but it comes pretty close. So this is a neat feature that doesn't come up a lot at NC State, but is a very useful thing for the WordPress world. You can set your time zone and date formats, and what day of the week you want your week to start on. There are certain widgets that will display like this week's blog posts, and if you decide you want everything to start on Tuesdays, you can do that if you really want to. But most of the time, most people leave these alone. Then if we drop down to the reading settings, here we have the site visibility options that we set earlier. I actually thought I set it to not let search engines, but maybe I clicked the wrong one. I'll have to go back and check. So your site visibility options, those privacy choices that you had before, whether you want people to have to put in a password. At the top, we have your homepage displays. So by default, your homepage will display your latest posts. That's how every WordPress website starts. And if we go back, we see that the posts that are displaying are my Hello World post and the post that I created earlier in this workshop. If I don't want my homepage to display my latest blog posts, I can change my homepage to be one of the pages that I've created. So I'll go ahead and pick my sample page. And now I save my changes. And it thinks about it for a second. There we go. And now when I go to my home page, I see the sample page that comes with WordPress, which is the page that I've created. And whatever content I change on my sample page will be my home page. If I want to get to my blog posts, the permalinks, the direct links to the blog posts still work, but now there's no view of all of my latest blog posts. And so for that, I can go to posts page here and select another page that will display those blog posts. It will display instead of the content that I created on this page. So my posts page will now, my latest post that I published will now display under another sample page. And so I click Save Changes, and that change takes effect. Excuse me. So those are the major features of WordPress. Hopefully you've gotten at least a little bit out of it. And if you want to review the video or review the slides at any point, I'm going to be sharing links to those out to everybody in just a little bit. Before I wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about Gutenberg, which is the new WordPress editor that I hinted at earlier. So if I open up a new tab and go to OIT Design.ncsu.edu/Gutenberg/quick, this gives me a demo of the new Gutenberg user interface. This is just a quick demo. It's not something that you can save changes on, and so you might see a little bit of funky behavior because of what we had to do to make it like that. But this will give you a sneak peek at what the new content editor will look like. If you're just typing text, it's still very similar to what you had before. I can just type, and this text will be published. But if you want to insert images or do anything more complex than text, that's where things start to get more interesting. So you'll notice that the toolbar that had been at the top of the editor now follows you around as you work on different paragraphs. And then you'll also notice that over on the right-hand side, there are more options. No, it can't save. There are more options over here for changing things like font size. So now I can make my text bigger and bolder without changing the heading structure, without misleading users with assistive technology who are using assistive technology. There are also things like color changes, so I can change my text color. If I really want my text to be UNC blue, I can do that. I don't know why you would want to do that. And if I want it to be a black text on a black background, I can do that too. but you'll notice that WordPress will give you this new warning that tells you, hey, this color combination might be hard for people to read. You should probably do something else. So let me reset that. So there's a lot of potential with Gutenberg. There's a lot of potential for inserting other types of content. So for instance, my cover image right here, I can choose an image that I can have be sort of a widescreen image inserted into my text, things like that. These are all really nifty tools that are just not quite ready for prime time yet. They're getting there, and we're hoping to roll this out for the websites that we manage next year. We already have a few. Oh, and there's my cat. We already have a few websites on campus that are. We already have a few websites on campus that are using the new editor as sort of pilot projects, but we're not quite ready to go beyond that, probably for a couple of months. But if you're curious, if you want to see more Gutenberg, if you want to work with it up close, if you go to OIT Design, yes, go ahead and leave, oitdesign.ncsu.edu/Gutenberg, you'll be taken to a page that's very similar to the page when you created your website at wordpress.ncsu.edu, that will let you create a testing website. And this testing website is more limited than what we have available at wordpress.ncsu.edu. It's just a password protected website that lets you a password protected website that lets you play with the new Gutenberg editor. But it's a good space to mess around and see what the future of WordPress will look like and get acclimated to it. If you'd like to learn more about Gutenberg, we do have more workshops. They might not be scheduled for the spring yet, but we do have more workshops that are available through Reporter, and on our website you can find information about our Gutenberg for content creators and Gutenberg for site administrator workshops. So with all of that, I've talked a lot. I'm really tired. I'm going to I'm going to continue the broadcast for maybe 5 more minutes and look at the Q&A document if you have any questions. But otherwise, please feel free to email me or email oit_wordpress@help.ncsu.edu. And if you have any other WordPress needs, I would be delighted to talk about it with you. So I'm going to be here to answer questions for a few more minutes, but otherwise, feel free to go. So we have a question about reviewing the menu actions. Where do you recommend me to go to look it up again? So if you if you need to look at that or anything else that I talked about today, first I will be sharing the link to this video out to everybody so you can rewatch it if you need to. But if you don't want to sit through all 2 hours to find that thing you were looking for, if you go to wordpress.ncsu.edu and then go to support and video tutorials, maybe not all, but many of the things that I talked about today are included in these video tutorials, and I believe menus are in here somewhere. If not, please feel free to stop by our office hours every Friday from 9 a.m. to noon in the Avon Ferry building. or you can always send an email to help@ncsu.edu or OIT_WordPress at help.ncsu.edu, and that should give you lots of options to get answers. All right, well, if nobody else has any questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all so much. You had some great questions, and I hope I was able to make a little bit of sense. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. All right, so thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon.